Introduce yourself and then we could begin the discussion.
Yeah, sure. My name is Josh Salcman. I'm a resident of Los Altos Hills, but I am running for school board in Palo Alto.
Okay, great. Okay. And do you want to talk about why you're running?
Yeah, sure. I have three kids. I've got a 10th grader at Gunn. I have an eighth grader who's currently at Synapse, but went to Nixon and will go to Gunn next year. And then I have a third grader who's at Nixon. My wife went to Nixon and Gunn. And so we're very connected to the Palo Alto schools, very invested in the community. And I have, three different kids, as I mentioned, with very different needs. My 10th grader is a ballerina, very type A, very self-directed student. And so I'm not worried about her in terms of getting her homework done, but I do worry about academic stress and sort of self-imposed expectations. And then my third grader wears hearing aids and is on the autism spectrum. And so he has a full-time aide who supports him in the classroom. He's in a general ed third grade classroom. But so, a very wide variance between the two of them. And then my eighth grader is much more of a hands-on type of a learner. So just within one family, having experienced this wider range of kids and students in terms of what their needs are has really made me appreciate just how important it is that as a school district, we find ways to meet our students where they're at. And help them make as much progress as we can, both academically, but also socially and in terms of their interests in extracurriculars as well. So when my son was diagnosed with hearing loss, that was 6 years ago. He was two, and I was taking a career break after two education technology startups that I had founded. And at that point became a full-time parent so that I could support him, and have gotten involved in the PTA and been a volunteer in the classroom and on the playground. So I've been very involved in the schools, sort of progressively more and more involved. And so the next step for me seemed like another way to give back would be to serve on the school board.
Okay. And what do you think the school board isn't doing well right now?
From my perspective, one of the things that I would really like to see us improve is the relationship between parents and the board, between parents and the district leadership. I've heard from many parents who feel that their concerns haven't been, haven't really been welcomed, that their feedback hasn't been welcomed, and feel like they have tried to provide input but haven't been met with receptivity. And so I think that's something that we should try to improve upon, because the role of the board is to represent the community. And so I think if the community doesn't feel like its issues are being addressed and its priorities are being reflected, then I think that's a problem.
So what concerns aren't being welcomed?
Well, I guess you'd have to ask different members of the community, but there are several different issues that have been brought to my attention.
Okay. And what are those?
Well, one group is concerned about the lack of sort of advanced academic opportunity for students who are, prepared for those types of more advanced opportunities. Another group was concerned about issues related to the way that the district has been developing and piloting an ethnic studies program, and what they saw as a lack of transparency in terms of that process. Another group was concerned about the the way that the moderate to severe needs program at Ohlone was, sort of shut down or merged with the program at Nixon. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that the district or the board has necessarily been making decisions that were incorrect, but I think that if you have, parents, from a variety of different points of view who all feel like they're not being heard, that to me is an indication that there's a culture problem. So that's one thing I would like to see addressed. I also think that we could be doing a better job as a district in terms of mental health, especially with our high school students. And that I think is going to require more partnership with other institutions besides just the school district, the city and cultural institutions, social institutions, religious groups, other ways basically to help students understand that there are a variety of valid paths through life and through school, that there isn't just one sort of path to success.
Okay. So on the three issues you talked about, maybe go through each of these advanced academic opportunities. What's your position on it?
What do you mean?
Oh, you said that you said there's a group of parents who are concerned about advanced academic opportunities. And so I was wondering, what is your stance on it?
Well, I mean, my personal view is that we should, as a district, be trying to provide the appropriate opportunities for all of our students if we can do that. I don't think we should get in the way of students who are seeking those advanced academic opportunities.
Okay. And then what about ethnic studies?
Yeah, I mean, the right now my view is that the district is, I think, is proceeding appropriately, which is to say that the pilot programs that are taking place at the two high schools, they're ongoing. I haven't heard any issues with those. And the superintendent made the decision to move back the date for evaluation of those programs to January. And, it had previously been in November. So I think that was a good decision. So I think it's premature at this point to say anything about that because I'm not privy to feedback about those courses. So I don't have any reason to believe that there's any issue there. So I think things are headed in a good direction.
Okay. What was I didn't follow the ethnic studies. I didn't quite understand what was the controversy again on that? Like why was it controversial?
Yeah, I think the issue was is that the school district hired a consultant that was based out of Berkeley, and that consultant had been associated with a particular slant on ethnic studies known as liberated ethnic studies that has been very divisive in other communities, partly due to the way that it frames different issues around oppressors, like people who are oppressors or people who are oppressed, or, issues that simply relate to skin color as opposed to more sort of complexity around some of the some of the conflicts or the relationships between different groups. So, and also the sort of politicization of, or sort of introducing politics into courses that are meant to bring communities together as opposed to causing division. So I think what happened is that because the district hired this consultant, parents within the community who, found out about the connection between this consultant and the liberated ethnic studies got concerned that that might be the direction that the curriculum was going in for Palo Alto. So again, I don't have any reason to believe that that's what has happened, but I think that, greater transparency and, inviting parents more into the process might have prevented us from getting into a situation where we had 1,700 signatures on a petition to slow things down.
So do you feel aligned with the liberated ethnic study? Do you think that's what the school board should be doing?
No, I definitely do not believe liberated ethnic studies is the right direction to go in.
Okay. So but the current school board does?
No, I don't know that they do. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
think this is necessarily an issue about the direction that they're going in. I think it has more to do with the process and the sort of lack of transparency, lack of sort of inviting the community into the process.
Oh, okay. So who was for the liberated ethnic studies then?
I'm not sure. I can't really speak to that. I don't know if there were people who were pushing that particular strategy or approach in Palo Alto or not.
Hmm. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for explaining. Although I have, a kid in the school district, I don't follow this as closely, so I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah,
Uh,
no problem.
okay. And
I mean, it is confusing, to be clear. I don't blame you for not knowing all the details either. What grade is your child in?
12.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, so the pilot program is for ninth graders. So that would be
Hmm,
another reason why you wouldn't have had any exposure to it.
I see. Okay. And then you said severe to moderate needs program merged. So what was the controversy with that?
Yeah, so there the school district had sort of reached a determination that the best approach for moderate to severe, kids with moderate to severe special needs was to have programs where there would be one teacher that would serve kids in the K through, kindergarten through second grade, and then a different teacher working in third through fifth, which makes a lot of sense because otherwise you're just dealing with an incredibly wide range of different types of needs. And so in order to move toward that structure, they combined programs from multiple schools into one school. So in this case, there was a K through 5 classroom at Ohlone, and there was a K through 5 classroom at Nixon. So what they did is they took the K through 5 classroom at Ohlone, they basically, closed that down and moved those families over to Nixon. And then they were able to have a K through 2 classroom and then a 3 through 5 classroom. And so that made a lot of sense from, all sorts of different perspectives. And in fact, it was something that I think teachers in the abstract were supportive of. And I think it is probably what's best for the students. But the process, again, that they went through involved giving basically no advance warning to the families that were going to be affected, and also not really giving any sort of a heads up to the teachers who were going to be affected. And so the end result was that you had families who felt like the district hadn't really taken into consideration the impact that this decision was going to have on them and hadn't included them in the process. And my understanding is that the thinking went basically like, well, we know these families are going to be upset, so there isn't really any point in asking them what they think about this, because we know this is something we need to do. And so, we will deal with them being upset when it actually happens, which I mean, on the one hand, I kind of understand that perspective, but on the other hand, I think what it does is it causes injury to the relationship between those families and the school district. And I think it has a way of spreading. So, if you sort of cause harm to the trust in the relationship, with one family, then that ends up potentially spreading to other families. And so we end up with a situation where we have, a breakdown of trust that's spreading. And so I think, the issue is if you have just one event like this, it's just one event. But when you have sort of a series of different things where there's this fundamental issue with the process that leads to this breakdown in trust, I think it just starts to erode the relationship between the school district and the community that it's part of. So that to me is the thing that's concerning.
Okay. You mentioned you did a couple of startups. Were you the founder?
Yeah, I was the founder of a company called Virtual Nerd. That was in 2007. We were using video as a supplemental instructional tool. And so we had created a patented platform for serving up videos in a nonlinear structure so students could dig deeper if they were, unclear about one of the prerequisite skills that was sort of a knowledge for that particular tutorial. So it was basically we were trying to create a tool that students could use in sort of a self-directed way, but that wouldn't just take them through this one-size-fits-all sort of online learning system, which, at the time that was mostly all there was, videos on YouTube. And if you found a video that was helpful, then great. And if you didn't, you just had to try to search for something else. So we were trying to solve for that problem. And we built a good product. We had some good partners, but we made a lot of mistakes and ended up running out of money. And one of our partners acquired the product. So at least it didn't become nothing, but that was the first one. And then I was also the founder of another education technology startup, this time focused on adult learners and more sort of hands-on skills, using video to create a scenario that a learner was asked to respond to by recording a video of their own, demonstrating that skill, which could then be assessed by other learners and instructors.
So how do you think your entrepreneurial skills are transferable to the school board setting?
Well, I think there's a number of different ways, but the other thing I'll mention is that my background prior to this was product design. And I think actually the product design process is also transferable. So the whole notion of product design as being a matter of problem solving, where you have to really understand the environment, you have to understand people, you have to understand the job that someone is trying to do, or the problem they're trying to solve, and what the constraints are. Come up with a solution and then be looking to iterate and learn from a prototype and how people use that prototype, and then create successive iterations where you're building on that, I think is something that we could really apply to education as well. But as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, I think that, being able to see opportunities to improve a system, being able to understand, what are the drivers for somebody's behavior, and what are the things that are most important to them, and then how does that translate into how you can create a system, or a service or a product that's going to really solve that need, is something that I think is transferable. I think, being able to communicate about a product or system is also very transferable to board work, because, I think one of the things that's really important about the school board is partnering with the school district to be able to, help the community understand. Oops, sorry about that.
No
My
problem.
lights just went out. To be able to understand what the initiatives are that the school district is taking, why decisions were made, and what the potential benefits are to different members of the community. So I think that's something that entrepreneurs need to be able to do, and could be transferred to board work. And then there's also, nuts and bolts around operations, around finance, understanding sources of revenue, understanding expenses, understanding what's required to make sure that you don't outspend your cash flow. I mean, there's some things there that I think are also important, because part of the board work is not glamorous. I mean, it involves looking at budgets, and understanding how money gets spent, and making sure that we understand what the different parts of the budget are, and how we can use different funds for different things. So I think that would be helpful as well.
Okay, great. One last question, because I just realized we're over time here, is, some people talk about the achievement gap and they want to kind of minimize the achievement gap. And then on the other hand, there's kind of maximizing the education for every kid.
Yeah.
And how would you fall where would you put yourself on that spectrum?
So I don't like using the metric of minimizing the achievement gap in the absence of, this idea that we should be trying to help all our students thrive. Because I think if the only thing we focus on is minimizing the achievement gap, I think there is a tendency to do that by whatever means are available. And in some cases, that might mean sort of what I think of as like a saggy ceiling. So I don't think we want to be bringing kids down. I don't want to see us holding kids back. I really would prefer that we try to minimize the achievement gap by bringing kids who are struggling up as high as we possibly can, as opposed to reducing the opportunities for kids that are, at the other end of that. But I also think that one of the things we need to do a better job of in our community and in our schools is helping students and families understand that, measuring everything according to grades or according to GPA is not necessarily appropriate for all students. I think there are some students who would be better served by thinking about the learning process differently, in terms of what they're trying to get out of it and what their goals are in life and career. And those may not be the same for every student. They probably shouldn't be the same for every student. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Josh. Well, thank you so much for joining my office hours. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate your time.
Okay, good night.
Take care. Bye bye.